Welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church.
How does your faith kind of play into it, or does it play into it?
What can be done about it? When I say the church, I'm talking about evangelical white Christians and the black folk who attend their churches.
Hello, welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. I'm Fred Jeff Smith, pastor of Shiloh, and I'm very happy that you're listening to us on iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Prime, or that you're viewing us on YouTube, Facebook, or Vimeo. As always, we encourage your comments, your input about the podcast. You can reach out to me at fredjeffsmith@gmail.com, fredjeffsmith@gmail.com, and we thank you for taking the time to share with us today. I'm very delighted to welcome to the Thrive podcast Ms. Carolyn Hill, who is a candidate for the Louisiana State Senate District 14 seat. Ms. Hill, thank you for taking the time to come and share with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure.
So tell me something about you and why you chose to run for this Senate seat. I was reading something that was written in the Reveille, LSU's Reveille, about you, and I understand that you have degrees in social work and in education. What made you make the turn toward politics?
Well, it was not on my radar. When I was a student at LSU, I did a community service project. And as you and I know, during that time, LSU was doing more diversity, bringing more African-American students into the university, and I was one of the ones.
Okay.
And so a lot of my classmates didn't look like me, and so I conducted a community service project in the Ardenwood area. My focus was truancy and juvenile delinquency.
Okay.
And so from that project, I was able to get the entire School of Social Work involved, student body involved in the project, and the project ended up being such a success to where we ended up getting news media. And one of the things that my goal was is I wanted to give the opportunity to my classmates to go into another side of town to understand the conditions and the living conditions of individuals that lived in impoverished areas, because they were going to be social workers and they're going to be working with, individuals that may not look like them or had the same culture as them or even came from the same environment. And so that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to do the community service project, but to also try to come up with solution problem. There was a problem with truancy and juvenile delinquency, but I wanted to find solutions. How can we help the Ardenwood community? And so it ended up being a success. I partnered with, at the time, Raymond Jetson, who was the pastor at Star-Hill Baptist Church, and I partnered with him. At the time, it was Councilwoman Lewis, Donna Collins Lewis. I partnered with her and some other local agencies, and the project ended up being a really great success, and it was good exposure for my classmates. It was good exposure for them, and so from that experience, I realized I had the heart to do the work for our people. I tell people I grew up in Miami, Florida, came to Louisiana at the age of 17 years old. My mom was a single parent. My mom and dad, they struggled with substance abuse. My dad died, he OD'd on drugs. My mom is still here. She's here with me today.
Yes, she is.
And I'm so glad for her to be here with me today. And, and she's had her struggles, but her struggles has empowered her children to want better and to do better, but most importantly, to give back to the community. And so for me, growing up in a very impoverished urban community, I saw a lot at a very young age. And I knew one day I wanted to be in a position just to help people. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know how God was going to allow me to do that. I just didn't know how it was going to look. But now I see how his platform for me is advocacy. Advocating for people, helping people. And so from that project, and I guess just having the willpower and the willingness to want to help, I was tapped on the shoulder to run for Bessie. Now, when I was asked to run for Bessie, I didn't know what Bessie was. The ink wouldn't even dry on my degree at LSU. But I guess from that project, some people saw some great things in me.
So tell me, you said you came from Miami.
Yes.
and you moved to Baton Rouge
Yes.
at the age of 17.
17 years old.
Do you ever miss the fact that you're not back in Florida?
I don't.
So you're happy
Oh,
in
yeah.
Louisiana.
I've been here for 23 years.
One of the questions that I like to ask people, especially with regard to their children, do they want their children to reside in the Baton Rouge community? You'd be surprised how many people come through here and say, "No, I don't want my kids to grow up in this environment." But you made a choice. You left Florida, large state, a very Republican state, but a large state, and you came to Louisiana, and you seem to have planted your flag here, and you're satisfied.
Oh, yes.
with
I mean,
that.
I tell people I love Louisiana. It's home for me. Born and raised in Miami. I will always be in my heart. But Louisiana is home for me. I mean, I came here at a very young age. Didn't know anyone. Came here, and my mom would tell you she was nervous about me coming here because I didn't have any connections, no family. Came here with 2 bags full of clothes in a garbage bag. But I was determined. I didn't let that steer me. But I met some great people on Southern University campus, some great professors, that really encouraged me, instilled me, and even helped me, get through. And so, I mean, I tell people Louisiana, the culture is great. The food is delicious.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And the people are awesome. And so I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. I mean, this is home. I wouldn't want to be any other place. I've been here for 23 years, and I'm still here, and I'm planted here, and I'm here to do what God's plan is for me to do. And it seemed like this is where He wants me to do His work in the state of Louisiana. And so I ain't going nowhere, Pastor.
Of the 3 candidates who are running for this seat, you and Mr. Selders both have a background in social work. What do you think it is about social work that lends itself to running for political office or assuming community activism through political service?
So honestly, most people don't know this about me. I wanted to be an attorney.
Okay.
But God had a different plan for me. And so I went into social work. And when I entered into the field of social work at Southern University, I realized that the things that I had experienced, it was more of like a therapeutic for me. Because a lot of things that I had experienced as a young child, it helped me understand and not be judgmental of people, of my situation, and things that I was exposed to. It gave me an open eye. It helped me to understand that, a lot of people are faced with challenges. And a lot of times we try to blame the person. But sometimes it's not just the person. It could just be things that they've been through in life, or it could be a chemical imbalance, that they're facing, or things that they were exposed to and wasn't strong enough to be able to overcome some of those issues. And social work really helped me to understand, but gave me the more ability to work with all groups of people, regardless of their sexual preference, regardless of their race, regardless of their religion preference, regardless of their, gender. It really gave me an understanding of people and how to work with people, for people, and advocate. And I won't change it in the world. I'm glad I became a social worker.
Okay. But help me to understand the bridge that brought you from social work and education into politics. I know you told the story about the community service project, but that could have just been a project, and then you go back to other facets of your life. But something about it was transformative for you, and you decided that this was the way in which you wanted to contribute to your community.
Yeah. So social work has 2 tracks. You can do a therapeutic track, which is more counseling, or you can do a non-social work track. So when I was at LSU, my focus was policy and research.
Okay.
So that was my passion. I knew that I did not want to do the therapeutic track, more counseling, direct practice. I knew I was more so into indirect practice because I wanted to make a difference. I knew at a very early age that I wanted to help people, and I felt the only way that I'll be able to do that was through policy. That's why I wanted to be an attorney.
I see. Yeah.
And so when I entered to LSU, I went the non-social work track, which was more policy, evaluation, assessment, research. And so I knew that's what I wanted to do because I thought I was going to be working in a maybe at a state agency working through policy, not being elected, actually, drafting and creating policy.
Right.
I never thought that, but I knew that I had a passion for policy.
Yes.
Because I knew that's where change started. And so from that experience and even doing the community service project, and I think it got a lot of good attention, I was asked by a friend of mine who was on the school board at the time. She said, Carolyn, she said, you did such a great job. She said, I think you should run for the Bessie board. I was like, the Bessie board? Like, I don't know what that is. I'm being transparent.
Sure.
You know? And so I said, well, I don't know, because I got to go do my research. And so I did do my research, and I realized that it was an education board that focused on education policy and that focused on the state of Louisiana education system. And so I was like, oh, wow, that'd be a great opportunity for me to do, because I'm interested in policy, and I could make a difference. So this young Carolyn at the age of 26 years old, thinking in that way. And so from there, I said, okay, I'm going to do it. Knowing I have no family here, no connections. And to be honest with you, Pastor, I didn't think I was going to win. But I was willing to put myself out there because I knew I wanted to help people.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I only had like $11,000 to run 14 parishes. And now one thing I didn't realize when I was doing my research, that it covered 14 parishes.
Yes.
I just thought it was just EBR. I didn't know I had to go to 13 other parishes.
Right.
And so I only had $11,000. Because I just graduated from LSU. The ink wasn't dry on my degree. And I just worked hard. And as I continued to engage on the campaign trail with the people, it just gave me even more power, more energy. It was like, oh, I can do this, I can do this. And so I was running against a machine. I was running against some powerful people. But when God has a plan for you and the stars begin to line up, that's what I say. When his plan is for you, can't no man touch it.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was his plan. Because I was not, I was shocked. I was shocked myself. I didn't know anybody. I'm running against a machine, a powerful machine. And God did it. So people ask me, how did you do it? I said, it wasn't me, it was God. That was a God thing. And so so God allowed me to be on the board. I get on the board. I'm the youngest one. Only 2 African Americans. So I was in a minority. But I always stayed true to my values. I always stayed true to where I came from, the things that I experienced, the things that I endured. And so my purpose on that board was, I knew the only way out of my situation was education. We knew the only way out was through our education. And so I worked very hard to get to where I am. And my goal, Pastor, was to make sure those kids that came from those same environments that I came from had the same opportunity in an equitable and fair way. And I fought. And I advocated. I was a standalone. I was a lot of times that, I stood alone, but it was okay because I knew I was doing what was right for the people and the children.
So, your work in Bessie, before we started recording, I told you I have some concerns about Bessie.
Yeah, you did. Yes.
I learned that Bessie has the right to overturn or veto the activities of local school boards, particularly when it comes to charters. And I find that troubling. If we have a local school board and if it's their job to manage their particular district, then how does the state education board just get to overturn what a local school board has deemed to be best for them? I'm not a big fan of Mr. Brumley. And I know that he has a lot of support from the current governor, but he was not put in place by the current governor. He was put in place by the previous governor, and I wonder what was on his mind when he made Mr. Brumley state superintendent. It's a long way of asking, do you regret some of the things that Bessie, not that you specifically have done, do you regret some of the actions that Bessie has taken with regard to schools, and particularly with regard to minority children?
So I'll say this, Pastor, and my 4 years on Bessie, that was my fight. That was my fight. And I totally agree with you. During that time, it brought such division amongst the district and the state. Because you're right. And that was one of the things that myself and Dr. Lottie Beebe, who's a Caucasian, was a Republican. And here I am, African-American Democrat. We stood together because we was fighting for what was right. Accountability, transparency, and just doing the right thing. And so I totally agree with you. A lot of things that they did during my tenure, I did not support. I did not support the charter managing groups coming in because they were taking over our schools, but at the same time, our kids were still failing. Our kids were still suffering. And so now here it is, a decade later, the things that I was advocating for, as I stated to you early, has come to fruition.
Yes.
A lot of the schools has transitioned back to the local school districts, And so for me, I tell people, I don't regret what I did. I don't regret for advocating and fighting for what's right. I don't. There was a lot of things that Bessie did during that team that I did not support. And that was not fair. That was not equitable. That was not right for our teachers, for our students, for our parents. And so even with Common Core, I didn't even support Common Core. Because I felt like if our students could not, pass the LEAP test, how am I going to put a test that's more rigorous than LEAP, and they can't even master this? We already got generations of children behind. So we're going to set more generations of children behind? So those were the stance that I took. And, there were a lot of moments, and people don't know that, I went home and I just fell on my knees and said, God, what are you doing? Like, I just felt like I'm just out here in the lion's den by myself. But, when you're in situations, you don't understand why. And now that I'm out of it, I understood. He used me to expose and to be a voice. And sometimes you may not get everything that you want for your district, but just exposing and being a voice is just as powerful as bringing resources to your district.
It is still true, please correct me if I'm wrong, that there is no empirical data that suggests that charter schools educate our children any better than local public schools. Not in this area. I can't speak for everybody wants to point to New Orleans, which has become just a charter school model for the rest of the state. But I have concerns when public school dollars are siphoned away from schools that really need the financial support and are pumped into charter schools. And yet the results are not any better. If you took an F school and turned it into a C or a B, I'd have to be quiet about it. But when it was taken as an F school and it's still an F school 5 years later, 10 years later, and then you're saying, well, thanks for the opportunity, we're leaving now. And you have to get a different charter school conglomerate to come in and take those funds. It's troubling to me. Now, let me transition out of that. That's my speech. Let me transition out of that and go to the office that you're seeking. You're running for state senate. This governor and this current iteration of the Bessie board have very definite ideas about education in our state. Do you agree or disagree, or let me ask it this way, where do you agree or disagree with the direction that Governor Landry wants to take public education in our state?
So I'll say this. Last week, the state released that Louisiana is no longer at the bottom as far as education, that we are number 32. I'm quite sure you saw
I
that
did.
as well.
I did.
So that we're making some progress. We're making progress.
But Governor Landry took credit for something that he had nothing to do with.
Right. So no, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm not
No,
putting on any governor.
I'm
just
just
saying as a
saying-
whole.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know. I'm not putting on. Was it? John.
Well, he called a press conference
Right,
and he talked
right.
about the wonderful things that they were doing.
Yeah.
Everything that he talked about was something that John Bell Edwards instituted before he left
Yeah.
office, and he's taking credit for it like it was something that he did.
Yeah.
Just wanted to get that out there, too.
Right. No, so for me, that shows that the work that is being done is working. What they're doing at the State Department is working. But I'll say this to you in regards to Jeff Landry agenda, whether it's John Bell agenda, for me, it's the people agenda. And so one thing about Carolyn Hill, I'm going to always advocate and fight for the people. I'm going to go back to my community, and any person will tell you, I held town hall meetings when I was a Bessie meeting. I went into the community and found out what the needs are for the people. If the people that I'm serving is not in support of whomever agenda, I'm not going to be in support of it, because they are the ones that elected me as their person, their voice. I'm accountable to them. And so for me, I'm going to always take the agenda of the people agenda. And I'm going to always advocate for what the people agenda is. And that will be my stance on any given situation that I have to go. Because a lot of times people get into office and it's their agenda.
Sure.
And they forget about the people.
Sure. What do you perceive is the people's agenda regarding the governor's expansion of vouchers, where he's taking money out of public education and putting it in the hands of families, primarily white, middle and upper middle income families, so that they can then take those dollars and use them to pay for private and parochial schools? What's your sense of where the people are on that?
So that's twofold. So one is, so I work in the school system, so I see a lot. And so when you look at families do want an opportunity. So some of the things that I've seen working in the school system, we have had an increase of students with autism. We have seen an increase of students with dyslexia. And there are programs that are out there, and some charter schools that are out there that actually specialize in those areas. So let's take Louisiana Key Academy, for example, which is a charter school, which is a good charter school. And they focus on kids with dyslexia. And so those kids are able to go to that school and have all the wraparound resources that they need to be academically successful. And it doesn't matter what your race is, what your, your gender. If you screened from us, from EBR, and it shows that you are dyslexic, we do refer to Louisiana Key Academy, because they have the people in place to make sure those kids thrive academically. So that's an example I'm giving you. In regards to autism has been on a rise. I mean, I don't know if something in the water, but we have seen a lot of kids come into the school districts to get evaluated, and at a very young age, being diagnosed with autism. And so there are some programs out there, even that focus on charter, and they have more specialized programs. So I'll give you an example like Dunham, which is a private school. They have a really good special ed program. And some of the kids that came through EBR has gone to Dunham, for their special ed program. And so for me, I just think families are just looking for an opportunity to make sure that their kids can thrive successfully. So how does that look? That's what I think. You asked me that question.
Yes.
I think that's what parents want. They want to make sure that they're looking for a place where their kids can thrive academically and have the resources that they need. Now, where we have to be more diligent is that the schools that need more resources, we need to make sure that those funds are being placed in those schools. I think that's where the disparity is.
Do the resources follow the child,
Right.
or do the resources follow the school?
So let me tell you this. So for example, during my tenure on Bessie, but they called it the voucher program under Gender Administration, there was no accountability. So guess what? A parent could say, oh, I'm gonna take these dollars and I'm gonna go to any school, a private school, and we don't know where the money went. We don't know what did they do, and then we see October 1, the child right back in a traditional public school setting. So there was no accountability, there was no tracking, there was nothing. There was no assessment to show if the child was making growth or were they doing better in the private school than it was doing it. There was nothing.
Right.
I did not support that. Here it is 10 years later, Senator Rick Edmonds has put a policy in place, a legislation in place. They don't call it the voucher program anymore. They call it the Gator Scholarship Program.
But it's a voucher program.
Well, no, it is. No,
Yes.
I disagree. It is a voucher program. It's
Yes.
about, now, what I liked about the bill, it had accountability. It spelled out in detail where the money is supposed to be spent. So the money is supposed to be spent on curriculum for that child. The money is supposed to be spent if the child is doing dual enrollment, AP classes. The money is supposed to be spent there. The money is supposed to be spent on textbooks for the child. So it spells out in detail what the money and how it's supposed to be spent. In addition to that, the child has to take an assessment test to show his or her growth if they're making progress. We didn't have that 10 years ago. They didn't even have nothing 10 years ago. They put that in place. And I was like, wow, this is what we've been fighting for, accountability. And so now under that program, and so if there's any dollars that is left for that child, that money goes into that child's account. And that money stays.
So the money follows the child.
The money does follow the child.
Okay.
And now there is law that states they have to show us how they're spending the money. 10 years ago, they had to show us anything. They had to just take the money, take the child, and we don't know what happened. Even if the child is progressing, now they are held accountable to show how this child is progressing based on an assessment and how the money is spent. And it spells out in the legislation where the money is directly supposed to go.
If government dollars go to schools that don't require certified teachers, do you have a problem with that?
If certified
Government
teachers,
dollars. Because many of these private and parochial schools don't require that their teachers are certified. They simply say, oh, I want to teach. And some of them, I'm sure, can be very good teachers. But if you teach in a public school in East Baton Rouge Parish, you have to be certified in order to do that. All of the teachers are supposed to be, I don't know whether they are, but they're supposed to be certified. And there's a level of accountability in the fact that an educator is certified to teach in the specific discipline where they are teaching. Whereas at a private or parochial school, without calling any names, there are many of them where there is no certification required. Many of the kids who attend these private and parochial schools are not required to take LEAP tests or exit exams like kids in public schools are. It seems to me that you're weighing apples against oranges or maybe apples against grain, where they're not even the same thing. I often lament the fact that people think that the Postal Service is the same thing as FedEx. Two different programs. I know they both deal with delivering packages, but they're two entirely different matters. I see the same problem with public education and private education. And with public education struggling the way that it does, I can't see the logic, the reason, the rationale behind taking dollars out of a system that is already struggling and funneling those dollars into a different system, a smaller system, a system that does not require the same level of certification that you have in a public school system. So that's part of my challenge with what I see this governor and this legislature doing. And since you're running to be a part of this legislature, I'm curious as to your thoughts on that.
I'll say this, look.
And if I'm wrong, please tell me that I'm wrong.
Oh,
Educate me.
I'm going to educate you. So my background is I graduated. All of my education has come from a traditional public school. I have been vetted in traditional public schools. I believe in traditional public schools. We have to have them because guess what? They educated me to be who I am. And I would never turn my back on traditional public school setting. And I will always fight to make sure that they have equitable resources in the school setting. So let's go back with the first question you asked me about the certified teachers.
Right.
Okay. 10 years ago, I would have agreed with you. Now that we have such a shortage in education as far as people not going into the field of education anymore. So even working in East Baton Rouge Parish, we're looking for teachers. People just not coming to teach anymore. You know, when I was growing up, it was a pride to go into education and become a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my aunt, who I'm named after, was an educator. She's deceased now, but was a principal. Now, kids are not going into it.
Mm-hmm.
Our shortage of teachers is just, I mean, especially those who go into education to be certified. I think I saw a study that Southern maybe, can't remember, I don't know if it was last year or the year before last, they only graduated 5 students in education.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's a totally different transition from 10 years ago, because I guess the students don't see that going to education is not a value anymore. I don't know what it is, but I know it's a shortage.
One thing, they're not being paid.
That's number one. Well, that's the number one thing. I totally
Yeah.
agree with you on that one. They're not being paid. They're not being paid at all. So that's one of the main issues.
Yeah.
And so now we have to revamp the whole system. The whole system. So we can't pick and choose, you got to be certified. We got to get who we're able to get who's educated, that specialize in that field, to make sure that they can teach our kids. I mean, my sister, who just graduated from Texas Southern, she has a degree in chemistry. She's not certified, but they have a shortage there too. They took her with open arms and gave her a bonus. So we're seeing a different shift in education because the shift is different now. We have to revamp the whole system because, one, we're not valuing teachers. 2, we're not paying them. And 3, people's like, I just don't want to deal with the students. Because the generation of students that we're dealing with is not like you and I. It's a whole totally different generation. And so just to go back to the point of certified teachers, 10 years ago, I would have said that. Now we need to have teachers that are in specialized individuals that have specialized areas, and to have them come into our school system. And once we're able to tackle that issue, then I believe in my heart that we can demand all these other requirements. Because now if we demand those requirements, we're gonna see what we see now, a lot of substitute teachers.
Well, should there be incentives to seek certification for these educators? And should there be pay incentives for those that are certified as opposed to those who are not certified?
I totally agree.
If I have gone the extra mile and received certification, should I not be rewarded for that?
Oh, no, I totally agree. I believe that if you come into the school system with a degree in education, if you've done everything you were supposed to do to be certified, there should be tremendous incentives. But we don't even have that. We're treating everybody on the same level field, playing field, because we have a shortage. I mean, this is a crisis, Pastor. I mean, when you have to have your student has a long-term substitute teacher as a teacher, that's a problem. That is a problem.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so I don't know what we can do. I mean, I know this is not only in Louisiana, this is a national issue. But, I mean, I know I got to focus on Louisiana, but we have to figure out a way of how we're going to be able to incentivize our educators, or even allow them to go into education. And so maybe one of the things we may need to look at is, like, if those who are interested into education, maybe we might have to give them free tuition, you know, or pay for their tuition to go to Southern University or LSU or start at BRCC, because the need is great. And the teachers are leaving like crazy, or they're retiring. They're either leaving or they're retiring. And so for me, if God allowed me the ability to serve as the next state senator, that would be one of the things that I would advocate for. I will work with our local teacher unions. I will work with the business community. I will work with the faith-based community. I will work with all entities to make sure that we tackle this crisis. Because we know education is the key to success. Education eliminates poverty. Education eliminates crime and all the other ills that we're dealing with.
I just want to see a more level playing field.
Oh, no, I totally agree with you on that.
Private schools, parochial schools are given more leeway than traditional neighborhood public schools. And their dollars are being funneled in from the state. I don't know how you get past the separation of church and state with that anyway, although we blur that line all the time. The state pays for meals in private and parochial schools. The state provides transportation to many of these private and parochial schools. and yet we want to talk about separation of church and state. I just want to see a level playing field, and I don't want to see public school teachers vilified.
I totally agree.
The way in which they seem to be vilified under this current environment.
You know, and I tell you, I strongly believe this environment started in 2012. That's when it started. And now we're seeing the ripple effect from what transpired in 2012. I'm going to say that. And so that's why we're seeing our educators leaving. That's why we're seeing students not having the interest in going into the field of education anymore. Because from 2012 to where we are now, you're right. Teachers has been, they when I tell you, Pastor, when I was on Bessie, those teachers used to come to that Bessie meeting and they used to advocate. They used to be standing up all around the building, you know, and their voice wasn't heard. It was just like they was just there. No respect. That made me so angry. You know what I mean? Like, so I think now we're having a ripple effect from 2012 under that governor's administration.
Sure.
And now we're seeing the impact of it from our educators' standpoint. So what do? We can't keep doing it down the drain. We have to revamp it.
I understand.
And so for us to revamp it, we have to make sure during the process, it has to be an equitable playing field. It has to be. Because if not, we're going to continue to lose educators and we're going to continue to lose our children. And that's what we're seeing. And so for me as the next state senator, if I prevail, that's what I will fight for. So,
you're running as a Democrat.
Yes, I
am. But I read in your statement that's posted in the LSU's Reveille that you feel like it's important that there be a crossover appeal to Republicans and even independents, you say. So what do you think there is about your person, your background, that makes you attractive to Republicans and independents if you're running as a Democrat?
Okay, yeah. So I always say that I'm a moderate Democrat on social issues, and I'm a conservative Democrat on fiscal issues. That's always been my stance.
Okay.
But I'll say what set me apart to be able to work with independents and Republicans, I tell people all the time, I look at people. I look at the person, the character of the person. Just because you have an R, an I, or a D behind your name doesn't mean you're always going to be for me or against me. I served on the Bessie board with a young lady that had a D behind her name, and everything she did was the opposite, to support. I'm just keeping it real with you, Pastor. I'm just being real. And I had a woman that didn't look like me who had an R behind her name for our community and our people than the one that looked like me with a D behind her name. So from that experience, Pastor, I look at the person and the interest. Can we work together? Regardless of your party affiliation, regardless of your race, and regardless of your gender, can we work together for the common good, but without compromising my integrity, my values, and my morals? Can I work with you? And I believe I'm that person. I can do that. I believe that I can work across all party lines. I believe I can work across racial lines and gender lines to get the common good cause for my people, but without compromising my integrity and my values.
Well, let me ask you this question in a slightly different way. As I understand it, this legislature is supermajority Republican in both houses.
Correct.
Both the state Senate and the state House. So they don't necessarily need Carolyn Hill to vote their way in order to get a piece of legislation. But Carolyn Hill needs to be able to get some Republicans to vote her way, to look your way in order to get the things that you want. So my question is not your integrity. I'm sure you're a woman of high integrity. My question is, what is it that you bring that will allow you to pull Republicans over into a Democratic perspective on certain pieces of legislation. Open carry permits on guns needs to be looked at all over again. This qualified immunity for people who shoot other people with these guns. This elevated tax system where you're raising regressive taxes on the poor while you're minimizing taxes for corporations. What is it that you can do to pull some of your Republican colleagues, should you become state senator, in your direction, as opposed to the current iteration of where they are?
Right. So one of the things that I'll be able to do is, number one, everybody wants to be heard. I want to sit at the table. I want to hear your philosophy. I want to hear your ideas. Now, we may agree? No. Disagree? Okay. But we can still agree to disagree and still get a common good and a common cause. So what can I do to do that? I know I'm going to have to work together. So there may be a bill, let's just say, may be created. But if I'm able to sit at the table with you and listen to you, and you have the respect to listen to me, and you have a bill that's in play, and I have some ideas that I know that will help my constituent base, that will help my district, and we can sit and come with a common ground and a common cause, yeah, I would do those things. That's what I say is true working policy. That is true working policy. Now, I may not get everything that I want,
Right.
but if I can get some things in there for my people to make sure that they have what they need for Senate District 14, I'm willing to sit at the table and work with you. And now, look, there may be some things I may not agree with you on, and I'm just like, look, I'm sorry, I can't help you on that one. I'm being honest. I mean, this one's too obvious for me. I just can't help you on that one. But then you may have another bill that may come up, and I'm like, okay, this is a workable one. So how can we sit down together and work together to make sure that I have what I need for my district, and your bill has what it needs for whatever your district is. And so those are the things that I'm willing to do. But I'm willing to do that, as I stated before. I'm not going to compromise my values.
Sure.
You know, I'm not going to compromise my morals, because there are going to be some times I'm going to have to tell them, no, I'm sorry, I can't be with you on that one. And I believe honesty and truth to take you longer. If you look at a person in the eye and say, look, I have the utmost respect for you, but the bill that you're representing, I'm sorry, I can't support you on this. And this is why. You can't do nothing but respect me.
The governor has line item veto power. So even if you and a Republican colleague agree upon a certain piece of legislation, when it comes down to cost, and perhaps even when it comes down to philosophy, the governor has the ability to strike certain things out of pieces of legislation. Are you concerned about that as you go into this upcoming? The reason why we're having this vote at this time is so that you can be seated in time for the regular session that's about to take place.
Yes.
So, do you have any concerns about this governor exercising his line item veto power in a way that would be deleterious for the constituency that you're seeking to serve?
Well, I hope if there's a bill and there's a bipartisan bill, and he has a veto power to veto that bill, which I'm quite sure as a senator we will have knowledge prior to the public receiving knowledge. I'm not afraid. I'm telling you, I'm not afraid. I mean, I will want to go meet with his administration. Now, whether they be willing to meet with me or not, but I'm willing to give it a shot to understand the purpose of you wanting to veto a line item that will be good for the people that I'm serving. Now, I can't guarantee that he'll say, okay, Ms. Hill, I'm going to meet with you or not. But I will still make myself available and will work very diligently to see if I can get with his administration. Now, do I have control over that, Pastor? I don't have any control over that.
Yeah.
But what I do have control over is I can still go knock on that door, whether it's his chief of staff, whether it's him or whomever his point of contact person is, and have a conversation with them.
Do you think the Democrats in this state are aggressive enough in this environment where there seems to be such a conservative push, and conservatives hold every seat. Do you think that Democrats as a whole, and the Legislative Black Caucus in particular, utilize media in as aggressive a fashion as they could in order to try to generate change? That's a nice way of saying, what are your thoughts about the Legislative Black Caucus?
Woo, Pastor, you all right with me? I'm about to upset some people, but it's okay. No, I don't. I think we have to do a better job of educating our people. We are much stronger in numbers than just one or two voices. And I believe that we need to, as a caucus, be more diligently engaging more in the community to bring in more information to our people. So when there are issues that arise, they'll be there to support us. Let me give you an example. I remember growing up, the NAACP, when there were issues at hand, whether it was national law, whether it was state law, how we as a people would gather together. We would just be all over the state capitol, lined up, advocating. You don't see that no more. Because that generation was educating us, those individuals, those politicians, those public figures. They were advocating for us. They were out there on the front line, but because they was on the front line, they wanted to make sure that we were engaged too. And they understood the power of numbers of us. Now, we have a town hall meeting or a press conference. The only people standing up there is the caucus. What are people? Where are the people? Why we don't have the pastors engaging? Why are we not having them down at the state capitol with us and having meetings, joint meetings with them and letting them educate their congregation? You understand? We don't have those. We don't have that anymore. And so, I mean, and look, I'm only 42, but I even used to hear conversations from my grandfather, who was a part of the NAACP, growing up, and he was strong, And I remember how things that they used to do marches. They used to, and that's why the caucus was developed. It's to make sure that our people stay engaged and informed and educated. And so, if granted, I would like to see that again. Because we have to bring all the people to the table.
Yeah.
And so that's my thought.
Other than education, are there any particular committees that you have a focus on that you would like to serve on should you be successful in getting in the state Senate?
Well, of course, education would be one.
Right.
I like to get on the criminal justice committee. I think that's a very critical. I think education and criminal justice go hand in hand. I don't know how successful I'll be, but I'd like to be on the finance committee as well, which means Ways and Means committee as well, because we know that's where the funding, that's the budgeting committee as well. So before it gets into the Senate or even to the House, you have to go through the budgeting committee to see where the dollars are, to see how I can help bring resources to my constituent base. So
were you disappointed in the governor's most recent stance in support of state police with regard to the federal government not bringing charges against state police officers in the Ronald Greene case? The governor seemed to see that as an exoneration of the state police department. I didn't see it that way. I have learned since Alton Sterling that it is very difficult for the federal government to bring charges in some of these police instances because of the way that the politics is stacked against the federal government in that. And I saw what happened with Ronald Greene as just an extension or an example of that. If I'm wrong, help me to understand.
No. I mean, I'm in agreement with you on that one. I believe that everyone needs to be held accountable, to regardless of what high standards you are. I mean, and so I'm in agreement with you in regards to that. And that's the thing, when you look at even law enforcement, you know, I always talk about criminal justice. You know, I'm a big firm believer that, you know, we have to have law enforcement. We do, because we have to make sure they regulate and protect. But in the same notion, they still got to be held accountable. If they're doing things that are not up to the standards of the oath that they're taking, then I believe in my heart that they need to be reprimanded just like anybody else. And that's just my belief. And so for me, I'm in agreement with you on that one, Pastor, because I think a lot of times people get into positions and they take that power and they use that. And sometimes it's not for the good. It's for the evil or for the bad. And so I'm a firm believer that accountability needs to be held across all spectrums, regardless of your position, regardless of your of where you stand. And so, yeah, that's
Are you an advocate of reviewing and perhaps changing the police officer's Bill of Rights? Because, again, citing Sterling back in 2016, when I began to look into that and talked to current and former police officers, it was really eye-opening to me to know that police officers had rights that the rest of the public does not have. And so I'm just curious, as someone who's seeking legislative office, state office, what are your thoughts about the police officer's Bill of Rights?
Well, you just educated me. I wasn't too aware of that, but one of the things, if that is true, so one of the things that I want to do if elected as state senator, I want to create a criminal justice task force for Senate District 14. And Pastor, I'd love for you to be on it.
Thank you.
And that task force will focus on issues, criminal issues and things that you're talking about, the Bill of Rights, and laws that we may need to review, revamp, amend, because I may not know everything. And I understand that you have to identify individuals in your community that who's on the front line, who is engaging, to bring them to the table. And so one of the things that I want to create is the Criminal Justice Task Force, and identify individuals in the community to serve on this task force and to help me make sure that the issues at hand that we're dealing with on a surface level, that I am prepared and that I am aware and that I know how to create legislation and laws and advocate for our people. And so that task force will be individuals like, of course, pastors. I like pastors on there. I'm not going to make it too big, because if you get too big, you can't get nothing done.
Certainly.
But I still want something really a nice size to where I would want a law enforcement appointee, like pastors, some organizations that focus on violence or, that we're dealing with in our community. Because what I understand, education is my passion, but there's a lot of other entities that I have to learn. And the best way for me to make sure that I am getting the right information, that I'm not making the right or the wrong choice, is people like yourself who I can have on task force. And so, as you just stated about the Bill of Rights, when it comes regards to law enforcement, if that's the case, we do need to review that. But how many people, your everyday living people, know that?
Black folk know.
You know
Trust
what I'm
me.
saying? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So for me, we got to educate, and that's what I want to be able to do. And so if that's the case, we need to review it. It needs to be looked at and reviewed, because no one should be held to a higher standards than anybody. We all are people. And so when you have a badge and a gun, that's even more dangerous.
Yeah.
That's even more dangerous. And you have rights to do certain things, that's scary.
Couple of quick questions. When Mr. Selders was here, one of the things that he talked about was transportation. Is there any hope that before I am covered with dirt, that there will be another bridge across the Mississippi River here in Baton Rouge?
I hope so.
They call it the New Mississippi River Bridge. It's the same age as I am, so it ain't new, because I ain't new. And so I'm just curious. Traffic and infrastructure are major problems, not just in Baton Rouge, but within the state. So is there any hope that I might have that we can see some improvement where infrastructure is concerned?
Well, I hope so. I mean, when you look at look at our streets, look at our buildings. I mean, you've got infrastructure and the state of Louisiana and transportation is a huge issue. A huge, it's a big issue. And so for me, I hope that my hope is hopefully they can do it in the next 5 or 10 years because the growth. I mean, we have so many people that's
pushing
coming.
the envelope on my age when you say say 10
you got another 20 in. You got another 20 in. You got another 20 in you, Pastor. Guys, when you got another, you got some more fighting. You got some more fighting. But that's my hope. You know, coming from a city like Miami, big city.
Right.
You know, I've seen. You know, it's totally different than living here. But from the years that I've been here, since I was 17 years old to now, the influx of people has increased tremendously, especially after Katrina. And so we have to do better in our infrastructure and transportation, because if not, I mean, this city's, it's gonna crumble. Because I mean, when you look at even the traffic now. I mean, I remember when I can get from one side of the town to the other side of the town in less than about 15 minutes.
Sure.
Now, it takes me about 30, 45 minutes.
Yes.
You know, and so, but we got to do better with when we are, and we have the finances and the resources to do infrastructure, we got to be more smarter how we creating things. You know, we can't be building subdivisions only one way in and one way out. You know what I mean? I mean, it makes no sense. We can't be, you know, just saying we're going to fix the streets, but we just, you know, putting a pavement over it. And we're not really, you know, fixing the potholes and, you know, fixing the structure of the drainages, and we just putting a Band-Aid over it. We have to really revamp, and we have to really create, because when you look at it, even with the climate, we're getting more hurricanes. So we don't need to have poles with lines up there. We need to go underground now. You know, so those are the things that we have to look at, and sad to say that we're behind compared to some states. And so we need to get, you know, at least almost there to where some of the states, we may not get all the way there, but there is an issue when it comes to our infrastructure, and there is an issue when it comes to transportation. And when you look at transportation, you know, I come from a big city. I mean, we use public transportation. I mean, that's how you get around. You got a metro, you have a train, you have buses. I would like to see that here. I would love to see that here. You know, a train to be able to come from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. You know,
there's been talk about it for the last several years.
I would love to see that. You know, but we can't just talk about it. Come on, we got to put it in action. You know, and so I would love to see that. I would love to see our transportation. You know, have more resources to put into, you know, communities that need transportation, especially those who work. You know, a lot of people don't have vehicles. They can't get to work. But you got to stand outside to wait for a bus for about an hour. It shouldn't be like that. No. I know in Miami, you go on a bus stop, they run it every 20 minutes. You know, every 20 minutes. Not saying that I can do that here, but we have to do much better, you know, serving our people with transportation as well.
Sunday's newspaper, Advocate newspaper, had on its front page that churches are having to make very serious decisions with regard to insurance because the premiums have gone up so much. They gave an example of a church that I'm familiar with down in New Orleans where the insurance premiums would have amounted to 40% of that church's budget, which meant that they had to make grave decisions about which parts of their insurance policies they kept and which parts they had to abandon. They had to let go. In New Orleans, they had to let go of wind policies. Wow. And we all know what wind has the ability, you know, the damage that wind can do. I've heard Governor Landry acknowledge the fact that he has struggled and he's frustrated by the fact that there's not been greater improvement in bringing insurance prices down, property insurance prices down within his state in the year that he's been in office. I appreciated the fact that he acknowledged that the problem exists.
It is a problem.
What do you think this current iteration of the legislature can do to help the governor in bringing insurance prices down and under control?
So I know that's been one of the major issues with insurance companies. Underwriters wanted to come here to write insurance policies. I mean, for us because of the hurricanes, etc. Look, my homeowners insurance has gone up tremendously. You know, which drives your mortgage. Your mortgage goes up. So not only your insurance going up, your escrow going up, your mortgage increasing as well.
Right.
So I want to see a change. As a homeowner, I'm even impacted by it. So if I'm impacted by it, I can imagine others are being impacted by it. And even with the 40% for the churches, that is going to be a huge issue. You know, and so for me, I think when it comes to insurance, we have to hold the insurance commissioner more accountable. That's just the reality of it. As a legislature, we have to hold him accountable. And it's our job to make sure that he's doing everything he can as the insurance commissioner to make sure that we're having an equitable share across the board. Because when I tell you, with the insurance, I was talking to my sister. She lives in Florida. She was just telling me now her insurance premium has now just, began to decrease. Because the people was complaining. The people of Miami was complaining, like, look, we can't do this. You want to be elected. You want us our vote. We can't live like this because we're too busy paying mortgages, and it's challenging to put food on the table because everything is going up. So for me, Pastor, I will want to work with those who are on the insurance committee team because one of the things that we're seeing is that we have to hold our insurance commissioner accountable. Because you don't have people that want to come to Louisiana to write policies, and even if they do, it's so much red tape because they want to keep certain people or certain companies, and it shouldn't be like that. If they're a reputable company and they want to come into Louisiana and write policies, that should be. You know how many times I've changed my insurance?
I know how many times we've changed ours.
You know how many times I was like, wait a minute, are we leaving Louisiana? They just came one year, next year I got somebody. And so. It is a problem. It's a problem. And as a legislator and as a body, we have to make sure that we're holding the insurance commission accountable and making sure that we're working for the people and not for the companies. That's my point. Yeah.
Last question. Toward the end of Governor John Bel Edwards' administration, he received a letter from the Biden administration saying that Louisiana as a state has shortchanged Southern University in funding to the tune of $1.1 billion. So Governor Edwards has been out of office for a year. The Landry administration has not said anything, or I have not read anything where they have addressed it at all. Do you think that the legislature can impress upon Governor Landry the importance that Southern University receive some kind this $1.1 billion shortfall be addressed? I know you've got a state budget shortfall as well, but a university like Southern could really use, of course, $1.1 billion. And you don't expect that to happen all at once, but there should be some plan put in place, some task force, some committee that is addressing that. To my knowledge, there is none. Is that something that you think this legislature can coax the governor into addressing?
I will. And I'm looking directly you in your eye to tell you I will. I believe that's the Black Caucus. That should have already been done. A task force or a team or a committee should have been created. Once we found out that money was there, we should have been acting. We need to be proactive, not reactive. And so I'm looking at you right now, Pastor, and telling you, I will. And if there's a way that I can identify or work closely with the executive director of the Black Caucus to create a committee of individuals to do more research and to help advocate. Like you said, we may not be able to get all the money, but at least we get something. Even if we get a third of it, it will help Southern University.
Certainly.
And so for me, I am a Southern University graduate. Southern University made me who I am today. I would not be where I am if it was not for Southern University. I wouldn't have the opportunity to get a higher education if it was not for Southern University. And I have sent several of my nieces and nephews to Southern University, which followed in my footsteps from Miami, Florida, even from my high school. And so I would do everything to preserve Southern University legacy, and whatever I can do as far as resources and funding, Pastor, I'm going to do it because they did it for me, and the least I can do is give it back.
Yes, ma'am. Look into that camera, please, and tell our viewers and our listeners why they should vote for Carolyn Hill.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm running as a change agent, a change for our community, a change for our people. We have to do better. If we want something different, we have to vote differently. If we want to continue to live in the conditions that we're living in, continue to have an education system that we currently have, to continue to have communities that don't feel safe, crime, our children are being murdered day by day. I'm asking you to vote for me because I'm going to be that change agent. I'm going to work day and night for my constituents. I'm going to be held accountable to you. I'm going to be accessible to you because this is not about me. It's about you. And I ask for your support. I ask for your vote. And I won't let you down. I would not let you down. So I ask you to vote for me, Carolyn Hill, for Senate District 14, number 2 on your ballot, if you want change. And change will come with a brighter future. Thank you.
Ms. Hill, thank you for taking the time to come and share with us today. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again next time.